All right, so the first story that we're going to be looking at from the Decameron is from Day 7, Story 2, and it's essentially a story about Peronella and her disobeying her husband. And as we talked about earlier, the common theme that we want to talk about is the theme of love and how it was a little different back then. And they really, kind of tended to betray their husbands, and not necessarily husbands, they also betrayed their wives sometimes too. Um, so basically, the story starts out with Peronella, and they lived in a district outside of Naples, and she also lives with her husband. And her husband actually works obviously every single day. So back then, that was very typical. So the husband kind of goes off to work, and the wife stays home and does what she has to do. And in this situation, Peronella typically just spun wool. Um, so soon Peronella kind of realizes that I have a lot of free time at home. So she begins to find love in a man that's named Gionello. When she begins to find like love with this man, what she does is she decides to invite him over. So essentially, what she does is she invites him over multiple times, and over the course of time, it became like sort of inevitable that there was going to be a point in time where this man would be over, and her husband is going to show up and kind of catch her. So of course, as we said, the inevitable came, and one day her husband kind of went off to work, and she invited Gianello over. And what happened was it was actually a Saint's Day, so her husband came back from work early. And when he kind of like got back to the house, he first approached the front door, and he noticed that it was locked. So his first instinct was, wow, like my wife must like really love me. She locked the door. She's trying to keep these bad people out. So meanwhile, like little did he know that his wife was actually having an affair inside the house. And when Peronello kind of heard him knock at the door, she began to go in a panic. And what she did was she immediately hid Gianello in an empty wine barrel that they had in the house, just in case, when her husband came inside, that he wasn't visible. So soon after panicking and kind of like telling Gianello to stay in the barrel, what she did was she ran back to the door, and she decided to open it. When she opened the door, she kind of just became like extremely frustrated with her husband for some reason, which was kind of crazy to me because like she has been having an affair with this gentleman named Gianello, and then her husband, after working multiple times to like produce for the family, what she decides to say is that he is lazy because he came home from work early. So essentially what happened was she started like ranting at him, saying like he was lazy, like he's not gonna have money to put food on that table, like things like that. So eventually her husband is like, listen, like calm down. Like the only reason we didn't have work is because it was a feast day. So they kind of like continue chatting, and then he mentions like, hey, listen, like the wine tub that we have, I actually found someone to buy it, and essentially uh, someone is like willing to buy it. So Peronella immediately knows that, well, her mistress Gianello is actually hiding in the wine barrel. So she immediately says that she's actually found someone that's willing to pay more for it. So her husband is like quite shocked about this, and he's like, wow, like that's a great thing. So what they do is they kind of go inside to go check out the barrel, and of course Gianello's in the barrel. And Peronella says that Gianello was just obviously checking out the barrel. Meanwhile, she was having like an affair with him. So what what kind of goes to happen is Gianello says like, listen, the tub is kind of dirty, so I'll buy it as long as you clean it. And essentially, the husband leans into the barrel to go clean the barrel, and Peronella also kind of leans in to tell him like which spots to clean. And then obviously, interesting things happen with the mistress and Peronella, and within time from by the time like the husband kind of came out of the barrel and was done cleaning it, things were already done, and that was kind of the end of the story essentially, where she was obviously betrayed. Or sorry, the husband was obviously betrayed. And like I said, I think this is definitely like a very interesting story, just because the theme of love back then, and especially in this story, just doesn't seem to line up. Like if she really loved her husband, why would she essentially do this to him? And kind of just like cheating on your spouse and doing things that obviously are wrong to the husband. And the other thing that I want to touch upon is the fact that if she was cheating on her husband, then he obviously works every single day when he came home, she became very frustrated at him, saying, you didn't even go to work today. Like, we're not going to have money to supply for the family.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Jonathan Skirpo, and today we'll be talking about our project for Italian Renaissance. The theme that we picked was to compare the love of modern day love compared to the Italian Renaissance era, and we are going to be comparing themes of like cheating, marriage, divorce, and taking advantage of your spouse. So, what I picked to talk about the story in the Decameron was the fourth day, ninth story, which I called the Eton Heartbreak. So in this story, it consists of three main characters. We have Ruslan, Cabistan, and Ruslan's wife. So Ruslan and Cabistan, they're both knights together. They work together, and they both think of each other as really close friends. They trust each other, but Cabistan has a love, a desire for Ruslan's wife. And Ruslan's wife also has that same feeling for him. So what happens is, despite being married to Ruslan, they end up having an affair. They start sneaking around the castle, and um, they're fulfilling their sexual desires. And so as time goes on, Ruslan ends up finding out. And Ruslan, he's thinking, my best friend, my wife, why would they ever do this to me? Like, I'm supposed to trust them. And so he's so confused. But what he decides to do is invite his good friend, Kavistan, to discuss a road trip to a major tournament in France. And so on his way, Kavistan's way to go meet with Ruslan to talk about the road trip, Ruslan will ambush Cabistan, and he kills him and rips his heart out and puts it in a bag to give to his chef. But right now, I wanted to compare. That would never happen today in this modern era. I mean, granted, the cheating scandal that happens today, but and maybe even killing, but murdering someone and taking their heart out is something that I don't think is very common at all in today's modern era. So maybe this was something just in the Italian Renaissance, but definitely something I found that didn't correlate with modern era. But continuing on with the story, Ruslan sends the heart of Cabistan to his chef to have prep for dinner as a boar's heart. Another quick side note. I feel like many people don't eat heart in this modern era. So something I find kind of weird. We eat all the other parts of the animals, but not so much the heart. So I found that a little weird, but who knows? Maybe some people do. So the cooked heart arrives at the table where Ruslan and his wife, his cheating wife, are eating, and he gives his dish to the lady. And so Ruslan says he has no appetite. He's just not in the mood to eat, which is understandable because he knows what's being fed. And so Ruslan asks his wife if she enjoyed the dish, where she says, very much so. It was so delicious. And then here comes the big reveal. Ruslan tells her that he tore the heart out of her lover with his own hands. And for some reason, she was not sickened or grossed out by it at all. She was sad, but she was not sickened. I mean, I know if I ate the heart of my lover, I'd freak out. I'd probably puke it up, do something. I would not be very calm as they seemed to make it that she was. The reason that she was so calm is because she said that it was so tasty and she'll never taste something so good in her life. So she said she's never going to eat again. So, yeah, so she says she's never going to eat again. and because nothing will ever be so good, which is something I find really unrealistic. But after that, she she walks to the nearest window and takes flight out the window and falls to her death. Um, and so after that happens, Ruslan flees the city and will never be seen again. Um, so I feel like that Ruslan in today's modern era, Ruslan would be caught for this, something like this. So I feel like none of this would ever have a chance to go down. But the Renaissance was a very different time. So I think that just the theme in this story is so different between love in today and through the Renaissance, because in the Renaissance I thought it's very extreme love, or there was nothing but cheating and scandal, which both of those topics are very relevant in this story. That they had, not Ruslan, Cabestan and Ruslan's wife had a crazy love and desire for each other, that she would kill herself just because he's not on this planet anymore. Pretty much what she did. While they also had the theme of scandal and cheating. So I really think that in today's modern era, um, we believe in being loyal, and cheating is something really forbidden. And in the Italian Renaissance, it's something that, as we've been reading the Decameron, it's something that happens all the time, almost every single story. So I find it really weird and kind of disgusting that this happens every single time in the Decameron and in these stories. But I mean, that's a different time. So I guess that this is my wrap up on my comparison of modern day love to Renaissance love. Thank you for watching.
Of love and relationships in the Italian Renaissance was the fifth story of the fourth day of the Decameron. This one's told by Filomena. It's about three brothers who were merchants, and they had a sister named Lisabetta. And the story begins with Lisabetta falling in love with a man named Lorenzo, who was a co-worker with the three brothers. And it all starts when they start seeing each other and things get a little intimate, and one of the three brothers spots them being together at their house, and this just causes him to get very upset because he's not too fond of this man. So he goes back and tells his brothers about what he just saw, and they're all very enraged. They were not too fond of this whole love situation going on between them. So the next day at work, they all go in, and the three brothers spot Lorenzo. They kind of coax him over. They try to be friendly with him, say what's going on. Then they end up saying, "Hey, let's just take the day off. Let's go for a walk in the countryside. Let's just relax." So he agrees. He sees that they're trying to be friendly with him, so he looks up at and this was from the video that we watched in class. He looks up at the window and says, "All right, Elizabeth, I'm going with your brothers." And she's wondering where that they're going to take him. And the brothers say, "Don't worry about it. We're just going to go on a walk. We'll be right back." And you're able to notice this distress from her. And the brothers also notice it too. They're like, "Oh wow, she's definitely with this Lorenzo guy, and she's definitely concerned that we're taking him away." So they go on the walk, and they say, "Just stay in your room, stay put, don't leave." And they say, like, you can't leave without any permission. And this is like the idea that women need to abide by not just family members' rules, but mostly the men or the brothers that are looking after their sisters. And I'll get back to this later when I'm talking about the relationship of love in the Italian Renaissance at the time to now. So back to the story. The three brothers take Lorenzo on the walk, and they're having fun with him. They're just playing some games. They're doing classic guy stuff out there. And that's where they decide to murder him there, and they bury his body out there. And the next day they all return back to the town, and the sister, Elizabeth, is still waiting by the porch, waiting for her brothers. And when they get back, she notices that it's just the three brothers and Lorenzo is not there. Now this is where the brothers notice Elizabeth getting very worried, and she keeps asking them, "Oh, where's Lorenzo? Why isn't he with you? Blah blah blah." And the brothers go, "Oh, we sent him on a business trip. Don't worry about it. And, he'll be back soon." She keeps asking, and one of the brothers finally says, "If you keep asking us, you're going to get the answer that you wanted," which is, when she hears it, she's not going to be too happy about it. And when she hears that, she immediately gets worried, and she thinks something bad happened to him. So that night, she goes to sleep. She's crying. She's weeping for him. She just wants him back. And then all of a sudden, she has a dream where she sees Lorenzo, and he's talking to her. And he goes, "Your brothers took me out of the countryside and murdered me. They buried me there. If you go out there, you can find me." So then she wakes up. And when she wakes up, she goes to her porch in the morning. Her brothers are down at the market working. She asks them, "Hey, can I go on a walk? Can I just take a day off, go walk in the countryside?" And they allow her. So that's another topic of the permission idea. And when she sets out in the countryside to just go for a walk, she finds where Lorenzo's body was, and she wants to take home part of him, so she cuts his head off and takes that part of him with home. So now, don't need to cover much of the rest of the story. It doesn't have to deal with our theme, but she takes the head home. She returns back to the town. She puts it in a plant. She gets very depressed and sad, and she tries to mourn him, and that's her little token of him that she still has. And her brothers recognize that that's what's inside the potted plant. They just want to get rid of it so they can finally get rid of all of this problems with Lorenzo and Lisabetta and her mourning of him. They want her to forget about Lorenzo just because they didn't accept him. But now when we talk about the theme of love and relationship during the Renaissance, this story doesn't cover much of the other two stories that my partner's going to go over, but this one's more of the family's involvement in the relationships at the time. So at the time, it was more the men and the brothers' involvement in the relationship. If they didn't like the lover, they didn't accept it. It just was not going to happen. And the three brothers weren't fond of Lorenzo right from the start, so they took him to the countryside. They just said, "Elizabeth, don't worry about it. Stay in your room. You can't leave without permission." And that's the part that I mentioned before. Like, the men and the brothers were very controlling in their relationship. They did not let the woman do her own daily tasks without any supervision or any insight from the men controlling her. And if you look at this present day, in the 21st century, women are now able to make most of their own decisions. They can do their own thing. They don't need any supervision from their brothers or fathers. They can also see who they want. They can be in a relationship with whoever they want without any family interference. The family can still try to sway the daughter, but nowadays, once you're an adult, you can decide who you want to be with. It doesn't matter what your parents say. But on the other hand, there's still some countries in the world that don't allow this. They still like to have a man around controlling the daughters or the sisters. They like to have some supervision with the woman in the family, and they don't have the same rights as men would. So with this being said, a lot from the Renaissance to now, a lot has changed with women in relationships and how the family is being involved. The women do obviously have a lot of freedom now in most modern countries and societies. They're able to make their own choices throughout the day and see who they want to see. But with the countries that don't allow this, nowadays there's definitely more prevalence of trying to seek for change. At the time during the Renaissance, definitely was not. Most countries were definitely on the side of women definitely need to be watched. They don't have as much rights. But nowadays, with globalization and social media, societies with more rights for women, they're the ones that are going to try to seek out and try to get the countries that don't have the rights to try to seek for change.